The story of 14-year-old Amy Elizabeth Weidner, who became a mother at such a young age, deeply affected the entire community. Her mother, Glory Weidner, although shocked by this news, always remained a pillar of support for her daughter. At that time, no one could have imagined that this early pregnancy would prove to be a minor event compared to what would befall their family 2 years later. Born in 1973, Amy grew up in a large family in Petersburg, Indiana. The girl had an older brother, John Paul, who was only a year older than her, and 2 younger sisters. Their mother, Glory Weidner, raised the children alone after divorcing her husband, who completely withdrew from raising his offspring. In their own house, Amy was her mother's true right hand. She not only helped with household chores, cooking, cleaning the house, and looking after her younger sisters but also showed remarkable diligence in her studies. Her cherished dream was to become a teacher. Everyone knew Amy as a cheerful and sociable girl whose smile could light up any space. Amy was an incredibly creative person. Her room was filled with drawings and poetry of her own creation. She had a special talent for writing poems, which she often dedicated to her family. Her teachers remembered that she also participated in the school drama club and dreamed of combining acting with teaching. The unexpected pregnancy at 14 became a real trial for the girl. For almost 6 months, Amy concealed her condition under loose clothing, not daring to confess to her mother. Only when hiding her belly became practically impossible did she, in tears, open up to her mother, begging her not to hate her for it. Glory, though stunned by the news, responded with maternal wisdom and compassion. "I was shocked and thought it was the worst thing in my life," the woman recalled later, not suspecting that much more serious trials awaited the family ahead. The father of the child turned out to be 17-year-old Tony Abercrombie, a friend of Amy's older brother. Their relationship developed in secret from everyone, but when the truth came out, Glory categorically forbade her daughter any communication with the young man. Despite the difficult situation, the entire community, from friends to teachers, rallied around Amy, providing her support. The mother-to-be showed remarkable responsibility towards her education. She came to school earlier than others, trying to get ahead of the program to avoid falling behind due to childbirth. On October 25, 1987, little Emily was born. The first months of motherhood were especially difficult for Amy. She suffered from postpartum depression but found solace in the support of the school psychologist, Mrs. Anderson, who conducted weekly sessions with her. Please subscribe to my channel, and I'll bring you more videos featuring the most shocking and true crime stories. Thanks to this support, Amy was able not only to cope with emotional difficulties but also to help other young mothers in similar situations. Remarkably, just 6 days after giving birth, Amy returned to her studies, now in the role of a mother. Glory supported her daughter in every way, helping with her granddaughter and giving Amy opportunities to sometimes spend time with friends, understanding the importance of maintaining teenage social life. Despite her new responsibilities, Amy continued to show excellent results in her studies, remaining one of the best students in school. The entire Weidner family united in caring for little Emily, taking turns looking after the child. Over the next 2 years, life seemed to enter a calm phase, and all difficulties had been overcome. However, no one could have predicted that everything would change radically in an instant. The tragic events unfolded on the morning of November 13, 1989, at the Weidner family home. 16-year-old Amy woke up complaining of a severe sore throat and decided to stay home. When her mother Glory offered to take 2-year-old Emily to the babysitter, the girl insisted she could manage and would stay with her daughter. After a family breakfast together, everyone went their separate ways. Mother left for work, siblings headed to school, and Amy remained at home with little Emily. The first warning signs appeared at 9:30 a.m. when Glory tried to call her daughter but unsuccessfully. After several hours and another failed attempt to reach her, the worried mother asked a neighbor to check if everything was all right. The neighbor found an unusual silence at the house, and no one answered her knocks. Overcome with anxiety, Glory urgently left her workplace and rushed home. Opening the front door, she immediately noticed little Emily sitting alone on the stairs. Despite loud calls, Amy didn't respond. Upon climbing to the second floor to her daughter's bedroom, Glory encountered a horrific scene. Her naked daughter was lying on the bed in a pool of blood, showing no signs of life. In despair, the woman immediately called emergency services. Law enforcement officers arriving at the crime scene concluded, after inspecting the house, that this might have been a robbery gone tragically wrong. Missing from the home were stereo equipment, a graphic equalizer belonging to Amy's older brother John Paul, and a glass jar containing approximately $50 that the girl had been saving for school needs. Investigators found no signs of forced entry, suggesting two possible ways the perpetrator entered: through the unlocked back door or through the front entrance, which Amy might have opened herself. Numerous pieces of evidence remained at the crime scene: traces on the bedding, a bloody handprint on the wall, and several body and head hairs from the perpetrator. Investigators paid special attention to an unusual detail. They found Amy's diary in her room, with the last entry made the day before the tragedy. In it, she wrote about her plans for the future and how proud she was of little Emily's progress. This diary became an important source of information about Amy's final days and her surroundings. According to medical examiners, Amy Weidner fell victim to a brutal attack. She was struck with a sharp object to the head, subjected to abuse, and strangled. Particularly haunting is the fact that little Emily might have witnessed this horrific event, although fortunately, the attacker didn't harm her. During attempts to communicate with the 2-year-old girl, she only noted, while running around the room, that her mama, as she called Amy, was very angry that day. The investigation launched extensive evidence collection efforts. They removed the section of wall with the bloody handprint and collected the victim's clothing and bedding. During the investigation, many individuals were questioned, including Amy's 17-year-old brother John Paul, who was initially suspected of the crime, but his alibi and lack of evidence cleared him of suspicion. Special attention was paid to Amy's former boyfriend and Emily's father, Tony Abercrombie. He openly admitted his feelings for the deceased and categorically denied involvement in the crime. Having a solid alibi, he was at work at the time of the tragedy. A neighbor, Troy Jackson, who knew about the stolen stereo equipment, also fell under suspicion. However, after thorough verification, including hair analysis and a polygraph test, his innocence was proven. His body showed no characteristic injuries, and his hair samples didn't match those found at the crime scene. The investigation conducted extensive interviews among Amy's acquaintances, from neighbors to classmates. Fingerprints and hair samples were taken from everyone, but none raised suspicions of involvement in the crime. The Amy Weidner case became a turning point for the Petersburg Police Department. After this tragedy, a new system for collecting and storing evidence was implemented, and a special cold case unit was created. Thanks to these changes, several other old crimes in the region were solved. Amy Weidner's funeral drew many local residents, for whom her loss became a personal tragedy. Detectives present at the ceremony carefully observed each attendee. Amy was buried in her favorite outfit, a white turtleneck and vest with an elegant pattern, the same outfit she wore in one of her most beautiful photographs. The Weidner family cherished hope for a quick resolution of the crime and just punishment for the perpetrator, but time passed, weeks and months went by, and the investigation had no suspects. After the tragedy, Glory Weidner officially adopted her granddaughter Emily, taking on the role of mother. The woman's psychological state deteriorated. She was haunted by thoughts of the killer and lived in constant fear for her family's safety. Despite wanting to move, the family's financial situation didn't allow them to purchase a new home. Fear gripped not only the Weidner family. Amy's friends were so frightened that they asked their parents to board up windows, fearing they might become the killer's next victims. The traumatic experience caused panic reactions. Once, upon returning home and not finding her daughters on the first floor, although their shoes were in place, Glory experienced moments of terrible fear until she discovered the children had simply fallen asleep in their room. Years passed, and Emily grew up, fortunately not retaining memories of the tragic events. neither the police interrogations nor the news of her biological mother's death. Periodic meetings with detectives forced the family to relive that terrible day repeatedly until Glory admitted her exhaustion from constantly stirring up the past, understanding it wouldn't bring her daughter back. In 2002, 13 years after the murder, a new lead emerged. A 29-year-old man contacted Indianapolis police, describing a dream where he allegedly communicated with Amy Weidner. Although most details matched information published in the news, it turned out the man had lived across from Amy's house and was a teenager at the time of the tragedy. His DNA and fingerprint checks showed no matches, but his call prompted detectives to reopen the cold case. That same year, they conducted repeated interviews with Amy's friends and close ones, especially those who had legal troubles over the years, but this yielded no results. In 2011, Amy's friends created a memorial group on Facebook, which caught Detective Bill Carter's attention. Although he specialized in investigating illegal activities rather than murders, the Amy case captivated him so much that he devoted all his free time to it. Carter meticulously studied every document, piece of evidence, school attendance records, and the list of funeral attendees. After systematizing the information, he discovered overlooked angles and potential suspects among Amy's brother's friends who had never been questioned or provided DNA. The detective began a new investigation, connecting with the Weidner family and Amy's acquaintances, and initiated renewed DNA collection from previously excluded suspects. In his investigation, Detective Carter decided to check old police records from 1989 about residents in the Weidner family's neighborhood. While visiting the same addresses, he managed to locate Amy's former friend who lived across from the house where the murder occurred. Among the names of the deceased's acquaintances she mentioned, one particularly caught the detective's attention, Rodney Dickey, who was previously unknown to investigators. In 2012, after receiving official permission from the Cold Case Unit, Detective Carter focused on investigating this new person of interest. It turned out that Rodney Dickey was a close friend of Amy's older brother, John Paul. They spent time together, rode bikes, and went fishing. According to John Paul's recollections, Rodney was a quiet, reserved person. At the time of the investigation, 40-year-old Rodney Dickey lived with his mother near the Weidner's house and worked at an auto parts store. Divorced, he had little involvement in raising his adult son. The detective's attempt to catch him at home proved unsuccessful, but Rodney called later and agreed to meet. However, when the detective returned again, the man was no longer home. A database check revealed that Rodney had previously been charged with assault in 1991 and theft in 1997. Comparing his fingerprints from the database with the bloody handprint from the crime scene yielded a sensational result. They matched perfectly. After 23 years, the case finally had a real suspect. However, Rodney Dickey disappeared immediately after the detective's visit. He was located thanks to the OnStar tracking system in his rental car. He was hiding at a friend's place in Indianapolis. During his arrest, Rodney tried to harm himself with a knife, screamed about his innocence, and even attempted to attack police officers. He was subdued with a taser and taken to the hospital. During a search of Rodney's house, investigators found a box with old newspaper clippings about Amy's murder. He had kept them throughout all these years, which psychologists later explained as typical behavior for serial criminals who often collect trophies or mementos of their crimes. However, no other victims of Rodney were discovered. During 2 days of hospital interrogation, which was fully recorded on camera, Rodney confessed to Amy Weidner's murder. According to him, as an 18-year-old, he had only planned to rob the neighbor's house, not knowing that Amy had stayed home due to illness. After entering through the back sliding doors and going up to John Paul's room for the stereo equipment, he unexpectedly encountered Amy. In panic, he struck the girl with the first object he could grab, leading to her death. During questioning, Rodney often cited poor memory due to the time passed, couldn't accurately describe his actions, and later even claimed to have had an accomplice named Buck, whose appearance he also couldn't describe. During interrogation, Rodney maintained he didn't act alone. Supposedly someone named Buck watched the house from outside before joining him inside. He denied seeing or hearing little Emily in the house. Despite the horror of his confessions, Rodney behaved surprisingly calmly and politely during questioning. His DNA analysis confirmed a match with the found on Amy's bedding, and the accomplice theory found no supporting evidence. "I always tried to be a good person, but I think deep down I'm not a good person," Rodney confessed to investigators. For the Weidner family, the killer's exposure was a true shock. The quiet and modest friend of John Paul, who lived across the street, frequently visited their home before and after the tragedy, attended Amy's funeral, and expressed condolences to Glory, turned out to be a brutal murderer. His signature was even found in the funeral guest book. Notably, Rodney's name first appeared in case files back in 2003 when Tony Abercrombie mentioned his frequent visits to the Weidners, but this information wasn't given proper attention at the time. The investigation revealed a chilling coincidence. Rodney's son, Dylan Dick, killed his mother Mary Maginry in 2009 at age 16, beating her with a baseball bat due to abuse. Father and son committed serious crimes at almost the same age. Rodney was 18 when he killed Amy. Dylan received 20 years in prison and will be released in 2029 when he turns 37. Just 10 days before the trial, in June 2013, 42-year-old Rodney finally admitted that he acted alone, without an accomplice. The court sentenced him to 65 years in prison. After the case was solved, the Weidner family organized a meeting with Detective Bill Carter, during which they released 24 balloons into the sky, one for each year without Amy. They expressed sincere gratitude to the detective who managed to track down the killer in just 12 days of work. In January 2014, the Indianapolis Police Department recognized Carter's achievements by offering him a position in the homicide division, but he chose to remain in his previous role. Emily Weidner grew up, graduated from the same school as her biological mother, and after university studies moved to California for better opportunities. Glory Weidner still lives in the same house, remembering her daughter every day. Amy's room still has her photographs, and now it's filled with joy and laughter again. Glory's grandchildren often visit their grandmother during holidays. Today, Emily Weidner is a successful business consultant in San Francisco. She established a charitable foundation in her mother's name that helps young single mothers get an education. Every year, the foundation provides several scholarships to girls who find themselves in difficult life circumstances. After the case was solved, Glory Weidner began actively working with organizations supporting victims of violence. She regularly speaks to law enforcement, discussing the importance of continuing to investigate cold cases. Her speeches helped maintain funding for several important projects investigating old crimes. Detective Bill Carter created a special methodology for investigating old murders after this case, which is now used in police departments across the country. He conducts training sessions for young detectives, teaching them the specifics of working with cold cases. The tragedy of Amy Weidner forever changed the life of Little Petersburg. The local school holds an annual Amy Memorial Day, during which they raise funds to help children from disadvantaged families. The school library has created a memorial corner where her poems and drawings are kept. And the local church installed a stained glass window depicting an angel that local residents call Amy's Angel. I can't wait to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments what you think about this case. And if you enjoy deep dives into true crime, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Until next time, friends.